As far as I'm concerned, Breakout should rank as one of Atari's very best games. It not only has a simple and addictive formula, but it also comes from the company's A-team. I'm talking about Nolan Bushnell, Steve Wozniak, Al Alcorn, and even Steve Jobs. What they created was so good that Taito couldn't wait to blatantly rip it off with the popular Arkanoid series. And even Nintendo got in on the action with Alleyway on the Game Boy. Now, almost 50 years after Atari first laid down those colorful bricks, they want us to break them all over again with the new game Breakout Beyond. By flipping it on its side and adding more complicated level designs, developer Choice Provisions has shaken up the formula in a lot of fun ways. But does that make it Atari's best reboot yet? Well, that's what we're about to find out when I review Breakout Beyond. This is not the first time that Atari has updated Breakout. Hell, this isn't even the first time this decade as Atari published Breakout Recharged just 3 years ago. When I reviewed that game, I criticized the widescreen playfield, complaining that it changes the speed of the action and limits the kind of brick patterns that were possible. Apparently, somebody must have been listening because the developers behind Breakout Beyond have taken what was great about that 1976 original and pushed it on its side. Literally. The first thing you're going to notice about this new Breakout game is that the camera has been turned 90 degrees. Although a little jarring at first, this shift actually makes a ton of sense. From a practical perspective, it allows the game to use the widescreen display in much the same way that the arcade cabinet used the much taller aspect ratio. This also gave the developer the freedom to actually move the screen, almost like it's on a conveyor belt full of colorful bricks. This time around, the goal isn't to clear a full screen of bricks, but rather to take our bouncing ball through a brick-laden obstacle course and quite literally break out of the level. At its core, that's the thing that sets it apart from the older games and many of its competitors. As much as it's about clearing a path to the exit, it's also an opportunity for the developers to create a whole bunch of increasingly complicated brick patterns that don't all have to fit on a single screen. As we scroll through the 72 stages, we see short patterns, long patterns, and even a few with familiar faces. Some are dense with bricks, while others are more spread out, giving you room to breathe and set up big plays. This conveyor belt approach really helps to flesh out the level designs, and it makes the game feel fresh, despite being an update to a 50-year-old game. Now, much like the recharged version from 2022, Breakout Beyond features a number of convenient power-ups, as well as a couple that feel like they're there to screw up your combo. One of the most effective power-ups will place a wall right behind the paddle, keeping your ball alive even if you miss it a couple of times. There are also power-ups that will explode when you hit them, or even give the paddle the ability to shoot down bricks, similar to Arkanoid. On the other hand, there's the multi-ball, which will split a single ball into 3, or possibly more if you hit multiple multi-ball icons. Well, this is great for taking out a bunch of bricks at once. Good luck paying attention to 3 or more balls at once. One thing that I like is how the player has a little control over the power-ups that you see in each stage. While many of them will be hard-coded right into the brick pattern, there are multiple spaces in the level set up for you to add your own power-ups. You see, as you complete each batch of levels, you'll unlock a new power that you can select going into a stage. That power-up will populate all the question mark bricks, giving you a tiny bit of control over how things play out. While the exploding items are certainly useful, I found myself opting for the added protection of a wall almost every time. That said, there are definitely times when the multi-ball power-up will make a lot of sense. Those looking to earn high scores will want to play around with the customizable powers to see which ones work best for them. Now, one issue that always seems to come up when converting Breakout into a console game is the gameplay. The brilliance of the arcade original was its rotary spinner control, which gave players a lot of finesse over the paddle. Unfortunately, this is not always translated well to D-pads and analog sticks, so you often find the developer winding the paddle to help balance some of this out. This certainly happens in Breakout Beyond, but it also goes one step further by adding a couple of clever ways to manipulate the speed of the action. For one thing, you can now speed up the paddle by holding down the right trigger button. This will allow you to go from the bottom of the screen all the way up to the top in a blink of an eye. Even more helpful is the button that slows down time, giving you just a little bit more time to position that paddle right where you want it. You can slow down time as long as you want or need, but I have to warn you, it comes with a bad side effect. You see, holding down that button quickly eats away at your score. This forces you to make a choice between earning a high score or having a slightly easier time completing the level. Look, I don't care how good you are at this type of game, because there are just gonna be times where you're gonna need to slow things down. That ball can get bouncing extremely fast, to the point where it's almost impossible to see. And then there are times when you have multiple balls bouncing around at once, sometimes more than 3. Can you keep track of all that at regular speed? What about 6 balls flying around when you have a brick wall right in front of the paddle? These are the moments where you're gonna need to slow things down. And let me tell you, just because the speed is cut in half, that doesn't mean that this game is too easy. Now there's plenty of balls at the slower speed. You still need to have enough skill to actually hit the ball. On another note, I like that the game doesn't try to complicate things by adding a story or try to explain what's going on. Breakout Beyond is a game about destroying bricks with a ball, nothing more. It doesn't take the Yars Rising approach and hide all the Breakout stuff behind a weird Metroidvania narrative, nor does it change things so much that it hardly feels like the same game, like that Haunted House reboot. Instead, we get 72 challenging stages, an unlockable infinite mode, 2-player support, and, well, that's pretty much it. Now that's not to say that Breakout Beyond is perfect, or even the best iteration of this theme. Even with the variety, I did find that many of the stages started to blur together after a while. It also doesn't have much new to introduce after the halfway mark, which is a little disappointing. And I'm sure that there will still be people out there who complain that it's hard to control without one of those rotary spinners. As an official Breakout game, I'd say that this is probably the best one to come out from Atari. That said, I would say that 2009 Shatter did more to evolve the theme and bring it into the next generation. Don't get me wrong, both games are definitely worth playing, especially if you're already into this type of game. But I gotta admit, I prefer Shatter. Look, judged as an Atari reboot, Breakout Beyond is one of their best. It improves and expands on the original idea without feeling the need to turn it into a completely different game. If you grew up loving the original Breakout, or any of its imitators, you'll enjoy many of the changes made to this no-frills update. It uses the widescreen display to shake up the level designs, all while making some clever decisions about scoring and customizing the power-ups. Breakout Beyond simultaneously does an excellent job of justifying its existence, all while making Breakout Recharged completely obsolete. This is another strong update from Atari. Atari's newest Breakout update flips the classic brick-smashing game on its side. Literally! Breakout Beyond uses the wider screen to create longer and more complicated stages, complete with new obstacles and a nice variety of power-ups. Through 72 increasingly difficult levels, as well as a new infinite mode, this reboot takes what worked 50 years ago and updates it in some fun and clever ways. While a little repetitive and not quite as good as Shatter, Breakout Beyond is a must-have for fans of this style of action game. Recommended. Hey, thanks for watching my review. If you liked what you saw here, then you should know that we post new reviews and features almost every day. Now, here's the question I have for you. What's your favorite ball bouncing game? Look, it doesn't have to be like Pong or Breakout, but any game with a bouncing ball. I suppose that could also include something like tennis or basketball, but I'm going to go ahead and let you decide how to answer that question. Can't wait to see your picks in the comments below. In other news, we're going to be back tomorrow to look at a bunch of fake next generation covers. If that sounds like fun, then I strongly recommend you click that subscribe button and support what we're doing here. Until then,